Party, yes. Got it. No problem.
Well, good morning, everyone. We're excited to be here. We have Dr. Tom Rowley here, who is going to be our first presenter from our pitch day presentations that were done in October from thought leaders. We had some incredible presentations going on, and we have a bunch of presenters from that group that will be presenting over the next few weeks for you guys. And I'm super excited to be hosting them. And Dr. Tom, you are number one on the list. This is fantastic. Okay.
First in the chow line.
Lucky you. Lucky you. Okay, so Dr. Tom is a problem solver. He started with his U.S. Air Force experience. He continued with consulting with small and startup business operations in Miami and Panama. He loves sharing what he knows. He is a former professor. He has a PhD in business. He is also a private pilot, both fixed wing and rotary, and loves to be in the air in a helicopter, admiring the scenery from a few thousand feet above. Or he also loves to be on a horseback trail riding, and of course that's on the ground. His current passion is sharing how to get young people to effectively evaluate the information they use to make choices. For example, to think critically and to engage their parents, cohorts, and community in a calm, intelligent debate of current important topics, to become respectful skeptics. So I love that. Okay, Dr. Tom's legacy goal is to develop an equine therapy facility to treat trauma victims and special needs kids. He's currently volunteering to learn the skills of an equine handler with McCormick Research Institute in St. Cloud, Florida, and providing pro bono consulting services for their growth plans. So that's fantastic. I love that you're giving back to the community as well. So welcome, Dr. Tom Rowley. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for the invitation. Delighted to have the opportunity to share what I know.
Well, we're excited to learn from you. So let's jump into it. So you are a former professor and published author of several books, which is great. Congratulations. So what is the focus of your books and why did you write them?
Well, let me start with why first. You may recall at the outset of the COVID pandemic, there were an awful lot of decisions being made. So this skeptical old Yankee accountant didn't make sense. They did not appear to be based on solid evidence. Having taught problem solving, having taught critical thinking, being a PhD trained in evaluating research, it occurred to me that there was something missing in the education. And I began to wonder, where'd these people go to school? So curious, I started to do some research. And the last classroom in the United States that I was in was 94 at Georgia State University in Atlanta. And my research resulted in showing that a lot of it was based on the anti-war protests against the Vietnam in the 1960s. And as a result of that research, I wrote the first book, which is Blame It on Nam, How Education Became Indoctrination and What You Can Do About It. Got great reviews, especially from teachers who went, they didn't tell us anything about this. Well, what's in the book and the core of the book is not only were the protesters explicitly, they wrote a manifesto around the time of the 1960 Chicago Convention that was so chaotic that if they wanted to take over politics, they had to take control of the universities. Well, their protests and their efforts, which had been reasonably effective, also were accompanied by at least a dozen federal legislation acts from the US Congress over the intervening 15 years, which, while well-intended. What they have not done is improve education results. And what they have done is create a huge bureaucracy. On a university campus today in the States, there's more office space occupied by people who are keeping track of the paperwork than there are professors and faculty. So we have a disconnect between what time is being spent. And I think from a leader's standpoint or a manager's standpoint, one of the keys here is too much emphasis on rules and regulations stifles creativity, stifles innovation, and we ought to make sure that the people who are responsible for teaching our kids have a good basis upon which to make their choices and make their presentations. The second book, which came out, addressed more to the teachers.
Hold it a little closer to the screen.
You got it?
Yeah, with the virtual, you can't see it very well.
Yeah,
Sorry.
okay. I'll put it in front of my
Okay,
face. How's
perfect. That we
I'll
can
hide.
see. Okay, great.
I can disguise myself behind the book. The same material, the same core book as Blame It on Nom, but wrapped around it with a different beginning and a different end to get parents, coaches, mentors to get their kids that they have responsibility for raising to learn to ask the right questions so that they get the right information to be able to make choices and have some reasonable expectation that the consequences of their choices will be what they expected.
Love it. Love it. Well, thank you. Thank you. So why is it that decision-making must be based on reliable information from valid sources?
Well, if we don't have good data, back years ago when I was first studying computers, it was called garbage in, garbage out. If the data is not valid, then the conclusions and the expectations that you make based on the incorrect data are not going to be what you expected or what you wanted. One of the authors of the books on horse racing and horse riding and horse management that I've been reading, Mark Rashid, has a great quote. It says, trying to solve a problem without understanding the cause is like trying to keep water in a bucket that's got a hole in the bottom.
True. True. And a great analogy there. Okay. Why do you recommend that we become a respectful skeptic to obtain relevant information?
Well, I think the communication process can't be like De Niro was in Taxi Driver. You talking to me? You've got to ask politely, well, why do you think that? What rationale do you have for that decision? I came up basically with what I call the 4 W's. Says who, why should I care? Why should I believe you? And where's the proof? So that individuals, if they were to go out to our webpage, we've got a revision going on, they can get a link to a copy of that, and I'll hide my face so that it's in the camera, that shows those items and the support behind why we have those topics, so that people can politely ask those kinds of questions, get good information, and make appropriate decisions.
Okay, perfect. Love it. Love it. And, I so agree with you that, we need real data, we need relevant information, we need, true data. And then definitely we can make the right decisions. So in your bio, it includes a legacy goal related to equine therapy. So can you tell me a little bit more about what that is and who can benefit from it?
I'd be delighted to. It's a passion of mine. Equine therapy has been around for decades in the United States and Europe. But ancient writings back in 460 BC, the Greeks were writing about the therapeutic benefits of riding a horse. 10,000 years ago, archaeological digs have shown that man was buried with comfort animals. Specifically, more recently, a woman in the 1952 Helsinki Olympics had been affected by polio and was partially paralyzed. She won a silver medal in dressage, and the people who saw it were amazed at how she and the horse could function as one, given her physical challenges. And as a result, Europeans who were involved with equine therapy started to incorporate horseback riding in their rehabilitation for physical choices. In the 60s, almost by accident, a psychologist had a mother who brought her autistic son into his session. The boy was uncommunicative, but the doctor's dog happened to be in the office. The dog and the boy just knelt down and talked to the dog. And the doctor and the wife, the mother are looking at it. And so he began to include the dog in all of his sessions. He wrote a book that was published in first edition in 69, a second edition in 97. So the European influence and Dr. Levinson's writings in the 60s, mostly Germany and England first, and then in the 60s, over here to the United States, into this hemisphere, and in Canada, started to incorporate equine therapy into the treatment of handicapped, now what we prefer to call special needs, and also proven to be very useful for PTSD. Now, McCormick Research, where my wife and I volunteer in St. Cloud, Florida, they've been in their facility. They started in 2002. They're in a wonderful facility in St. Cloud since 2016. They've got a decade of documented research in concert with the University of Central Florida's medical school, clearly documenting the improvement in the psychological welfare of PTSD veterans. So there's some really good evidence that this is not only interesting and fun for people who like to ride horses, but for people who are struggling, it gives them a really good bridge.
You know, I have 4 boys, and one of them is under the spectrum, high functioning, but under the spectrum. When he was younger, we tried that. We took him to an equine therapy farm, as you will. And, he was, he loved to like play with the horses, touch them, brush them, that kind of thing. But he refused to get on top of one. So the whole therapy thing didn't exactly pan out because he wouldn't get on it, but it was like such a beautiful idea. He loved being there. He loved being with the horses. He just would not get on top.
Well, it's interesting that you share that, because our experience, neither my wife or I are mental health professionals. So at St. Cloud, we don't get to work with the PTSD veterans, but we do get to work with the special needs kids.
Okay.
And some of them are uncommunicative. Some of them have physical disabilities that can hardly walk. But when you put them up and you set them in the saddle, they light up.
Yeah.
Now, part of that is because if you can get a 1,000-pound horse to go where you want it to go, builds your confidence.
Right.
But there's an awful lot of work that can be done on the ground, grooming a horse, helping understand, walking around with the horse. You really don't have to get on top of it.
Right.
But if you can get up and get past that fear, then there's a whole another level of ability to improve your willingness to communicate and build your confidence.
Absolutely. I love it. Okay. So how does connecting with a nonverbal and non-judgmental horse impact our ability to communicate?
Well, as you are aware, and many other people, horses don't have a spoken language. I mean, they make verbal sounds, they make snorts and puffs, but nothing that you and I would understand. So what we've had to learn is body language and how to communicate with the horse by looking at the way the horse is physically. What muscles are tense? Where are they looking? Where is their neck? Where are their ears? Before the Industrial Revolution, people relied on horses for almost everything.
Mm-hmm.
They were our transportation. They hauled plows in the fields that tilled the food so that we could eat.
Yeah.
They hauled explorers and settlers across 2 continents as they expanded their reach. They carried warriors into battle.
Right.
But most people today, post the last 100 and 125 years, most people have no interaction with horses. They're just big animals. And so there's this intimidation factor
Mhm.
because they are so much bigger than we are.
Yeah.
So once we can get past that intimidation, then we can get to the next level.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. And it's true. Like they're so big and intimidating looking that a lot of people are just fearful to even attempt to get close. But, having people like you share the benefits of the therapy and what can happen, the potential, it might open up some people's eyes to, say, hey, okay, this is an option, right?
Well, because they are so large and they weigh so much, you've got to be very careful when
Mm-hmm.
you're around the horse. And part of the equine connection is you've got to establish a safe space. And the horses are smart. They'll understand what that is. And if you're not careful, even if the horse doesn't intend to, they can
Mhm.
bump into you, knock you off balance. And if you have stability issues to start with, it can be a problem.
Right.
Even if the horse doesn't intend to, if they step on your foot, it's going to hurt.
Yeah. I would imagine, that much weight stepping on you. Yeah, it is
Yeah.
a good tickle, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so what is it that enables trauma victims and special needs kids to overcome challenges when they learn to ride a horse?
Well, I think the first step is just the the mental confidence of physically climbing up on top of a 1,000-pound animal and getting it to go where you want it to go, so that you can, in fact, say, well, wait a minute. If I can get this 1,000-pound horse that doesn't understand English or French, and sorry about the beagle in the background, but he's thinking it's lunchtime, that they can then say, well, maybe my classmates or my friends in the playground, I can communicate with them as well.
Love it. Love it. Okay. And our last question, what are the 3 key attributes of effective leadership that learning about horses can help people become successful leaders?
Well, I think there's 3: trust, training, and situational awareness. Let me share a quick story. I'm standing in the middle of a 60-foot round pen, and the stable master leads this beautiful golden brown horse that had never been ridden into the ring. And with just my hands, no voice, I was to get that horse to run 2 laps around the perimeter, looking at me, deciding whether I'm a threat, and then stop, and then reverse him and have him go 2 ways around the lap again, and then stop, and then drop my arms to my side and stand silent and still. And the horse looked at me, and he took 1 step, and then another, and then another. And I held out my fist to greet him. And he sniffed my hand, and he licked my fist. And I smiled, slowly turned my back on the horse, and took a step towards the gate. Second step, and by the 3rd step, I felt the horse's nose on my shoulder. That connection, that physical and emotional connection, is at the heart of equine therapy for PTSD and trauma victims. The ability to lead. Monty Roberts, who is the one who invented that process and talks about leadership and managing of horses, says that a leader has to create an environment where people choose to stay with them rather than to go someplace else.
Mhm.
Equine therapy and leadership is based first on trust. That horse had to decide I was not a threat and I could be trusted. And if I was going to be trusted, he'd go wherever I wanted him to go.
Mhm.
Within an hour, we had a saddle on that horse. It'd never been ridden. It was amazing.
That's
So
awesome.
leaders, and if we look at what leaders do, first aspect, they've got to establish trust and an environment where people want to be with them. Training. In training horses, as we've talked before, you got a 1,000-pound vegetarian that doesn't speak,
Great.
but they have a language. They have a body language. And we need to understand what the horse is thinking and doing by the way they're standing. What muscles are tense? Where's their head? Where are their ears? For people who've not been around a horse recently, from the top of the horse's head to their muzzle could be 3 feet.
Mhm.
The top of their head is where their ears are. And they're like little radar antennas. They rotate independently.
Right.
Their eyes are at the top of their head. Horses in their natural habitat graze 80% of the time. So if their head is down in the grass, their ears are up here, and their eyes are out on the horizon, they can sense a threat. Their hearing is far better than ours. Their sight is incredibly better than ours. And if they sense there's a threat, if they raise their head, people who've not been around a horse in a while, the withers, the top of the shoulders of a horse, I'm over 6 feet tall, 6'1". The withers of the horse are 6 feet off the ground. If they raise their neck and their head's 10 feet off the ground. They can see for miles, and they can hear things that we have no idea.
Right.
Had an experience where I was on a trail ride. We were stopped. We were enjoying the view. We were sitting around. And all of a sudden, the horse got spooked. We have no idea. Could have been a snake in the grass a half a mile away that the horse sensed that said, wait a minute, I'm getting out of here. All right. So a psychologist, neuropsychologist by the name of Dr. Stephen Peters did a study in concert with a very well-talented and highly respected 3-time bestseller, Mark Rashid, about horses, did a study comparing the horse's brain to a human's brain. And Dr. Peters did functional MRIs on students when they were studying. And he found that when they were in the process of learning something, there's little parts of their brain that were activated. But when they stopped and were given a rest, the brain continued to process that information. When they came back to the material with no apparent additional effort, they understood it better than they did when they walked away. So what his research and other people around horses have learned, short interval training, good immediate feedback. Horses respond to what's known as pressure and relief. You squeeze your legs on the horse to get it to move in one direction or another, or you pull on the reins, they want to turn. But it's the immediate feedback and short sessions, if you will. I'm used to, as a former professor, we had 2-hour block of a lecture. But you could take that same 2 hours and slice and dice it into 15-minute segments. And the students in that 15 minutes with positive feedback and reward come back into the next one. You can spread it out over a week. They don't have to do it all in one sitting. So these online courses that do that have demonstrated again that we learn better when we have short intermediate stuff. It has direct impact to organizational training, to leadership training, to management training, short focus sessions, immediate feedback, and relief. Let them go have a coffee and relax and go do something else and then come back. And the third aspect of what we can learn about horses, about leadership, is situational awareness. You know, horses are prey animals. For thousands of years, they've been somebody else's lunch. They have learned that they need to be aware of what's within a half a mile of where they are. So they're always situationally aware. In a herd, and interesting because of your group's focus, the lead mare, not the lead stallion, is usually the one that's in charge of the herd and dominates it. So that lead mare can have its head down in the grass, grazing, doing whatever, their ears and their eyes are on the horizon. They can sense a threat or a potential threat.
Mhm.
And the first response of horses to safety is run. Get away. They'll run a half a mile and then
Mhm.
stop, turn around, look back, see if this thing that scared them is after them. Part of
Mhm.
the reason why going around the 60-foot pen to get the horse to run, so that he knows that I'm not chasing it, to
Right.
build that trust.
Right.
So managers need to be aware of what is your competition doing?
Mhm.
How is the process within your own organization going? Is it smoothly moving? Are there bottlenecks? If there are, got to step in and be able to solve them. And the team members have to trust that their leaders will do that so that the organization can advance and prosper.
Mhm. Love it. Thank you so much for sharing some great information with us about this topic. And, is there anything you want to ask of our audience?
Well, if I had a call to action for leaders of today's business, I would encourage them study body language, improve their communication skills, carries over not just to the leader of an organization. I mean, we've all seen videos of the late Steve Jobs. Recently, we've got Elon Musk, who are clearly visionaries. They can see what's likely to happen. I mean, Elon Musk is a perfect example of a leader who can anticipate, which is Tony Robbins' favorite expression. Okay, we were sending rockets with 2 or 3 guys to the moon. Government was spending millions of dollars for these rockets. They ended up in the ocean. And Elon says, oh, wait a minute, why can't we shoot off a rocket and bring it back and shoot it up again and bring it back and use it in both directions? And he's proven you can do it.
Mhm.
So the leaders have to be situationally aware and be able to anticipate what could be, not necessarily what is. In communications, proving body language, a salesperson trying to make a deal, you're trying to close a real estate deal. Somebody's going, yeah, well, okay. But if you look at their body language and they're standing there like this, or they're standing there like this, you've got a much better sense. Do they like the house or do they don't like the house? Are they just being polite or are they really interested? So my call to action, improve our communication skills, look to the future, understand what's going on with the future. And while you're at it, have some fun. Get out and spend some time with horses. They're wonderful creatures. We'll learn a lot just being around them.
Love it. Love it. Well, thank you so much for your fantastic presentation. I hope people will connect with you and look forward to learning more from you in the future. Thank you so much.